Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear viewers, Assalamu alaikum. I'm your host Faisal and you are watching Foresight. Viewers, International Monetary Fund's team for review of the extended fund facility of $7 billion for Pakistan is due to arrive next month in February or early March. Now, government is vigorous to pursue IMF reforms agenda with tightened fiscal and monetary policy, and that's why the macroeconomic indicators showing encouraging signs. As inflation gone down to at least 4.1%, rupee appreciates to 1.2%, Pakistan Stock Exchange breaking all records and historically surged 84% in 2024 last year. In first half of the financial year 2025, export risen by 10.52% and foreign exchange reserves, they are still satisfactory and hovering around 16 billion US dollars, but the pressure is on and lots of issues still persist. Namely, like World Bank's latest report suggests that poverty increases at least 25.3%. That is really a daunting challenge. Then unemployment rate is still very high and that is over 6%. Inflation trickle down is still not visible. Tax collection targets are still to achieve. Energy sector, crucial reforms are on, but the circular debt and that is creating a problem. And imports and debt servicing pressure is still there on reserves, and Pakistan has to pay at least 26.1 billion US dollars this year. So it's again a huge task. Government recently unveiled an ambitious Uraan Pakistan a 5-year economic transformation plan which aims to take Pakistan's economy to new heights, targeting a whooping $1 trillion US by 2035 and $3 trillion US by 2047. But what does it take to achieve this ambitious vision? How Pakistan will achieve its real-time economic objectives, and how Pakistan turn around its economy? These are the real questions. And to get answers of these questions, we have in our studios Dr. Usman Chohan. He is the advisor on economic affairs to the president of Center for Aerospace and Security Studies, CAS. Most welcome to you, Doctor. Thank you very much for your presence. And with him, Dr. Neelum Nigar, she is the senior economist. Most welcome to you, Dr. Saeed. Thank you very much. And online joining us, Dr. Aima Mehdi. She is a senior economist and she is joining us from United Kingdom. Most welcome to you, Dr. Saeed. Thank you very much for your presence online. My first question to you, Dr. Chohan, that what about Uraan Pakistan, that is the 5 years economic transformation plan just unveiled by the government? It's an ambitious plan to take Pakistan's economy to $1 trillion at least till 2035 and subsequently to $3 trillion by 2047 by focusing particularly on exports, the e-Pakistan, then environment, energy equity and empowerment. While specific focus on information technology, agriculture, manufacturing, mines and minerals, manpower and blue economy to rebrand overall the made in Pakistan. So how do you see that, how does the government will be able to achieve such an ambitious plan?
Thank you for having me on your show. It's a pleasure. My esteemed colleague also, it's a pleasure. This Uraan Pakistan idea is fascinating because it relies on an old wisdom, which is the 5-year plan. That was a very successful model when it was effectuated and implemented in the mid-20th century. And at the same time, it is very much in a contemporary mindset. It is looking at the areas where there is an underutilization of talent and capital. And so therefore, it gives you a blueprint. Now, how to achieve that is the subject of debate. Many people are discussing this right now. I want to point out one thing, though, about the target, that in 2035, we aim to be a $1 trillion economy. In fact, our finance minister is on record saying that if you add the formal and informal economies of Pakistan together, you already have surpassed that number. He is on the record saying that. And I think there is some truth to the magnitude. The precise number cannot be determined because it is by nature informal, so the informal sector. But already we have, in a sense, attained that target informally. The formalization of those structures can be achieved by driving growth in various areas. The magnitude is not far-fetched in the sense that this is a growing country demographically. It is one which has a vibrant and dynamic diaspora as well, which does have hundreds of billions of dollars worth of assets, not to mention the human capital they have. So when we hear 1 trillion, it may sound like an abstract concept, but in fact, in a sense, we have already achieved it. It's a matter of formalizing it and then bolstering it so that if 1 trillion is one target, the next one at our centenary is 3 trillion. That is a much harder issue to resolve, how that will be sustained into the future. But that's quite far ahead.
Okay, your point well taken. Dr. Neelum, do you not think that promoting the small and medium enterprises, entrepreneurship, encouraging freelancing, investments, market diversification, the value addition, the export-led growth strategy, and the trade diversification, and then rebranding Made in Pakistan as a global, not only the standard of quality, but also a name of trust, would ultimately help Pakistan to really grow faster, stabilize rupee and reduce reliance on imports and loans? Do you think so that we can do it?
Thank you, Raza. I agree that by focusing on these particular areas, entrepreneurship and the other avenues, they have the potential to turn around our economy. As we have seen in many other countries also, that these are the areas which have the potential. But there are certain challenges that we need to address first. The structural issues, as Dr. Chohan also referred to, are embedded in the roots of this economy. Until and unless we address those structural issues and provide the policy, the sectoral policy, which is needed, be it in the tax system, be it in the IT department, be it in the other areas, the consistent policy which is needed is missing right at the moment. So we need to first do the reforms that which are needed and implement them in its right and true spirit. That is missing what we have seen over the past many years, that those need to be addressed first in order to achieve those ambitious plans which was referred by Dr. Chohan also in the new 5-year plan. Those are all achievable. They are not very over ambitious. They are achievable. Until and unless we do the reforms that are needed in all these sectors, we can achieve those targets which the government has planned.
You are absolutely right in that count, because in that case we require a real seriousness and the will to do that, because nothing is impossible. We can do it. You are right. Dr. Usman, IMF delegation is due to arrive in February or March for the first formal review that will be due this year, in the first quarter of this year. Most benchmarks still to achieve, like we have the issue of circular debt, the tax shortfall is there. Although tax to GDP ratio in December at least, that crossed 10%, but still we have a lack of achieving that target, which is 13 trillion, I think so. So tax legislation, that is again a issue. Progress on the future fate of the state-owned enterprises. So how IMF will be satisfied on shortcomings on reform process, and also when projected external financing inflows by the IMF, do you think those are going to be realized as well?
This is a tricky question because there has been clear progress made from the Pakistan side, and yet, as you are correctly noting, not everything has been achieved, and so the challenge remains significant on several fronts. You have identified taxation, that's correct, as well as legislation, as well as circular debt. So when the review team comes, they already did make a little detour here earlier on in November, just to make sure people were on the right track. And so we had to assure them that yes, we are, but now there is more evidence.
Although the government is serious in its approach to
Yes.
achieve each and every benchmark, but
Yes.
yes, because of the tricky economic situation, might be most of the benchmarks are not going to be achieved, but at least they are trying hard to have that.
Yes, you're right. And therefore, when the negotiations happen, there may be some give and take that perhaps something was not as achievable. Let's meet in the middle and do something more realistic, because we have to keep in mind the background of when this was discussed. It was the beginning of 2024, the end of 2023, really. It was a very difficult time in the global economy, and we weren't sure about how things were going to be. Alhamdulillah, since then, things get better and better in terms of a lower and lower inflation rate or other indicators as well. Mindful, of course, that there are things to resolve. It's not the same world as it was 1 year ago, and so therefore there might be some give and take at that point.
Your point well taken. Dr. Aima, do you think that macroeconomic indicators are on the right track under IMF extended fund facility, and strict reforms agenda is on, including the fiscal and monetary reforms, scheduled external debt servicing, reducing current account and the fiscal imbalances, having some sort of a market-driven exchange rate, and then low inflation and interest rate, particularly when we are talking about the state-owned enterprises rationalization. We are meeting tax reforms and collection targets along with other benchmarks. So do you think that we are going to have all these indicators at the table before IMF delegation next month?
Thank you, Raza. Thank you for such a comprehensive question. I'll take it one by one. So beginning with what IMF had set for us, so we're clearly sure of what our revenue target was. So we're at least 3.5% short of the revenue target. Even with the more stringent and strict policies, we've still fallen short in November and so far in December. So that's going to be one thing that is really concerning for the current government and the way we put forward all the extended fund facilities. However, in order to rebalance and sure that we have enough of this revenue generation, we need to increase our tax base. So that has been a consistent issue for our government and for our premiership, how to increase the tax base, because we cannot continue with taxing the salary class. So that has been in discussion, and increasing the tax base, if it's in terms of land ownership, if it's in terms of property taxes, etc., and the way FPR operates. I just read in news today, this morning, that FPR is going to have cameras with the sugar mills. I mean, whatever it takes, that if it takes POS systems with the grocery stores, or it takes cameras at the sugar mills, whatever it takes, we need to increase our tax generation, and that has to be set apart from the salary class in the country. And this is going to be the topmost agenda for IMF when they come at the end of February or in the beginning of March, because yes, we fall short over there. The second thing is the government is really exploiting the fact that inflation has gone down. Of course, it has gone down in the last 14 months, worldwide, globally, and for Pakistan, of course, it's come down to 4.1%. If I look at the past 12, 16, 18-month forecast, there's a slight chance that there'll be an increase of inflation between 0.7 to 1%, but that's perfectly fine. The inflation for the first 6 months for Pakistan will still be quite below, like 6%, 5%. It's going to be in a very safe region, which is a very good sign for the government. If they want to make plans on reducing the interest rate a little bit, that's fine, but they cannot aggressively reduce the interest rate, because then if we continue doing the monetary easing, which is reduction in the interest rate, then inflation can hike up, because that's an economic phenomena. If the interest rates are going down, there's more demand for cash, and then there's more demand, there's more purchasing, and inflation goes up, and we are in a very tricky situation already. We cannot afford that. So the government and the announcement on reducing the interest rate has to be very carefully signals. Also, the economies worldwide are looking towards the US decreasing their Fed reducing their interest rates, and Fed is also taking a very cautious approach towards that. So Pakistan, the SVP, State Bank, has to be very cautious around that thing. And the other thing about the reserves, sure, our reserves have gone up because the remittances have been on a record high, around 35, 36%, but Okay, fine, we had those remittances, we've built our reserve. I wouldn't count them at 16 billion. I will still count them at 12, $13 billion because we have a few of those reserve amounts coming in from the Saudi Arabia, etc. However, month on month for November and December, our reserves have gone down by 0.7 billion, which we have to be cautious about, because the only thing that I can see in historically in the financial markets, and you know how our reserves work, is we have a very aggressive imports policy. So we keep importing stuff, and that is when we're paying in dollars and our reserves completely crash down, and then we go back to IMF. So if we are accountable for how we spend our reserves and how much imports we allow in the country, we are in a very safe position.
Definitely,
Coming towards
yes, definitely, you are absolutely right on that approach. But Dr. Chohan, what about the tax collection? As Dr. Aima is very right in that perspective, that tax collection targets in the next half of the financial year 2025, as despite 40% of the increase of overall target of that is 13 trillion rupees, seems to be a daunting task right now, as at least rupees 386 billion was the shortfall during the first half of the financial year 25. Although according to the chairman FBR, the tax to GDP ratio during the second quarter of financial year was 10.8%, which was actually surpassed the IMF target of 10.6%. But this is one thing, and achieving the overall target is the very important area. So how do you see that, how much we are on target to achieve this ambitious tax to GDP ratio, particularly the 13 trillion rupees target?
Absolutely right. So the absolute target that we have is the one that really matters, because tax to GDP ratio has two elements. You can simply reduce the denominator, you can shrink your GDP, and you can get a good tax to GDP ratio. The purpose is tax, and that also within the larger principle of fiscal sustainability. So you also have to look at expenditure and taxation. I believe that the burden that is being put on the FBR is too high, which is to say one bureau in the center that has to deal with 25 crore people and various industries is not fair. Actually, this has to devolve down. And that's why you're seeing some changes like an agriculture tax and so on, that is a provincial mandate. You have to actually look at the district level and provincial level taxation to get more balance out of it. There's only so much that they can squeeze you, me, Dr. Saiba, the salaried class, before it's just not worth it to work at all. And so there is that Laffer curve concept where if you tax too much, you'll actually get less tax out of them.
Obviously.
And this balance striking can only be done while the machinery works down to the very grassroots and does a fair deal for everyone, while also not spending more than it needs to have fiscal harmony, more so than purely taxation.
Definitely, although the government has already tightened the fiscal and monetary policy, but it is very important to curtail expenditures, the government expenditures. That is very important. I have a question on that as well. Dr. Neelum, as Dr. Chohan said, that what to have about FBR, the Federal Board of Revenue, the digitization process. Would the subsidies and the tax evasion get an end through such measures? Informal economy would brought into the tax net. Filing of the tax returns, the submitting the tax, getting rebates or the refunds would become easy in future, or more citizens will be able to have voluntary filing of the tax returns, and the tax base get broadened, then the tax compliance and the revenue collection will increase. And do we expect that ease in the tax burden on current taxpayers, as Dr. was mentioning about the salaried class and particularly the small businesses as well? So whether they get some sort of a relief out of, because definitely this year we have another budget as well.
Yes, I think for any economy, for any country, digitization of an economy is very important.
Very important,
right?
Yes.
As is the case in our economy, that larger portion of our economy is informal, as Dr. Chohan was also referring to in the initial remarks. So in that case, digitization is important for each and every sector of this economy in order to document them for tax purposes and for many other such things. But the real issue is how to incentivize the retailers, the business persons, the property dealers, and other many sectors in order to bring them under the tax net. One thing that we are constantly dealing with is this digital payments are still not very much accepted by wherever you go. You go to the retail market, you go to the restaurants and others, they still want to evade the digital payments of
Even
anything.
we have imposed the agriculture income tax, but the land digitization, the land record digitization is still in process, and that needs to be focused.
Yes, in that case, that what I was referring to is you have to make things easy for people.
Obviously,
to get themselves
and that
registered.
ultimately would be an ease for the state,
For the
government
state
as
also.
well.
So there are certain things, these are not out of the box solutions.
Yes,
countries have
definitely.
been doing this. You have to make them easy so that every individual, every citizen of this country can make its transactions just with the case of a one click of the button.
Yes.
So that in countries, in developed countries, it gives you the real data of people, what they are purchasing, what they are doing, and things like this. For any
Data
economic
accumulation
activity.
would make easy when everything is digitized and
For
digitalized.
all economic activity, it's important that the state gets real data of what is being spent, what is
Absolutely
coming,
right.
and things like this. So digitization of the Federal Board of Revenue is very important, though it will not address all the existing issues of the board, of the economy, but at least it would address the payments, the tax records, and other issues which are still a huge challenge for the government.
Your point well taken. Dr. Aima, might be one area was left when I have asked last question, and that was related to the state-owned enterprises. What about restructuring, rationalization or privatization of the state-owned enterprises, their self-sustainability and the work plans for the capital management, the debt servicing, improving efficiencies and the performance as once again during the first 6 months of the financial year 2025, rupees 436 billion support extended to the state-owned enterprises. It's a huge amount, and bringing total losses since 2014 till now is at least 5.9 trillion rupees. So how do you see this huge burden upon the exchequer, particularly in the form of state-owned enterprises?
Again, a very interesting question, and I did want to touch upon it before as well. So the thing is, nationalization and privatization, two things work hand in hand, and they work on globally, and they've worked really well in economies like UK, in very good Central European economies. It's worked really well. So privatization is not something that we should hinder. It's not something that's bad. The issue with Pakistan is, like, for example, if I talk about PIA, nobody wants to buy it because it's in such a fragile situation. Also, the way it's been turned into PIA and PIA holdings, and the way the fixed tangible assets have been transferred to another holding company, that has been the main issue in how it has been privatized. Right now, the current CEO has had some routes activated, and they're trying to increase the fleet, which is a good sign. And if it is now privatized, it's going to give us good benefit, and I think they must be privatized because it's just like a deadlock for the government, and it's just an extra expenditure. The other very important thing for the government is how the oil refineries work. We import more oil from Iran and other countries, which again is not a bad thing. If that's how the economies of scale work, fine, we import it. But the way our own oil refineries in Karachi, the Attock oil refinery in Rawalpindi, these refineries are not even working to 50% of their capacity, and they're just like they're like in an old state. They're not state of the art. But if we improve these and invest in the technology that's used in these state-owned enterprises, I think we can really enhance our economic activity. Because right now, if you see globally, all economies are looking towards economic growth, and there's going to be a surge in oil demand. And if oil demand rises and price oil per barrel 2 or 3 days has hit the highest in the last 2 months. So if oil keeps going up, then the inflation impact that we are really benefiting from in Pakistan is going to be the worst.
Definitely, you are absolutely right, because
So
refined oil and its products are third and fourth important commodity which we are actually exporting from Pakistan right now, because the oil demand in Pakistan gone down, so we have a little leverage to just export these commodities as well. You're absolutely right on that approach, really. So,
So these are the things. So yeah, so in terms of state-owned enterprises, the third thing that I would narrowly like to touch is like how we're trying to outsource the operations of Islamabad International Airport. The Turkish company has given us an offer which is well below the threshold. So
yes,
this is not the way things are privatized. If we invest a little bit to remodel and reface these
definitely.
enterprises, we
This
can
is the
have
very
we can
important
reap a
point.
big
But
benefit.
this is privatization is not the only case that we just have to privatize just for the sake of privatization. But we have the options of remodeling, restructuring, change in management, rationalization, and all others. There are lots of other models available, so we can avail those models as well if we want to have efficiency of these state-owned enterprises. Dr. Usman, although the deposits from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, then the United Arab Emirates and China, then record remittances over 3 billion US dollars, which were increased, and export growth at least 12.2%, or we can see $31.4 billion as compared to the last financial year. First half gained at least $16 billion of exports. So has contributed a lot to the reserves, no doubt about that. But still, these reserves are hovering around $16 billion or a little bit more or less. So although it's improved from at least when we started in 1st January 2024, that was $12.5 billion that time. But ongoing pressure driven by particularly the external debt repayments, like in financial year 2025, this half, and then over the year, Pakistan has to pay at least $26.1 billion. It's a whooping amount, and increasing imports. No doubt that most of the imports are necessary for your different economic circles to go on. But obviously the imports are rising now. So cautiously, these two areas actually burdening the foreign exchange reserves. So what do you say that how we have to be more proactive in that sense to accumulate more reserves for Pakistan to have more flexible muscles in economy?
Absolutely. There is no inherent barrier to us exporting more. There's no reason why we shouldn't be exporting more so long as we have quality assurance and market research. Because you can't cut down your imports too far. First of all, imports form part of the value chain for exports. You do need some components because you don't make 100% of the exported final product. The second is that you do need some imports for your fiscal side because you have a twin deficit issue. When you import, you tax that. So having more imports actually strengthens your fiscal part because you tax. So there's a harmony to find between fiscal and current account as well. Remittances have helped to bolster things. Either you can export more people, metaphorically speaking, because they remit more, but also look for other markets because the global system and the global attitude towards trade is very different now than it was even 5 or 10 years ago. Because you have now this tariff regime that's coming in America. Our main importing country, counterparty, is the United States. They're going to raise tariffs that the Americans will pay. So there will be inflationary issues. You have to look for other markets now where you can fit in. So there's no barrier on exports, but you do need to have more imports because of your fiscal side and the value chain system.
Yes.
So this harmony we have to find.
Definitely, your point well taken, Dr. Neelum. We have energy generation through imported fuels, and then rapid transmission grid, then the distribution losses and electricity theft as well, the issues in power and gas revenue collection as well. We have lots of issues on that front. A heavy independent power producer contracts, then capacity payments, then power sector circular debt, which is attached with the capacity payment there, now reached at least 2.4 trillion, and that is increasing with the time. Although the threshold was 2.31 trillion, that was the benchmark in 2024. So alternate energy integration is still there. We have to do it. Then energy reforms are slow but going on, but we need to expedite it. Then domestic and commercial consumer issues, those are all there. It's all hampering actually the growth, the economic growth overall, and minimize the industrial competitiveness, then affects the exports, reduce your trade. Your thoughts?
Raza Sahab, the power sector is one such sector where reforms are needed and policies which could address the existing challenges within the power sector are important. As you referred to the circular debt, it is a huge challenge which has been going on for many governments that we have seen. But you referred to the alternate kind of energy sources that we should rely more on in order to address at least the challenges in our reform in our power sector is. But the thing is, we have seen that when we talk about, when the consumers or the industries talk about alternate energy sources like solars, what we see is the response from the government of Pakistan is quite opposite to what people are expecting. So the alternate power sources like solars, like wind and others are very important to address the existing challenges. But beyond that, the existing issues in our power sector, the line losses, the leakages of the transmission, the power transmissions are needed to be upgraded, which is important. We have installed, we have
Recently, Asian Development Bank
yeah.
extended a project of 200 million US dollars for the transmission lines particularly. So the work is actually going on. Government is actually seems in between, that is the cheaper power on one side, which is available in the alternative energy, and then you have, or even the hydel energy, we have availability of that. Then on the other hand, the capacity payments, the contracts which were already with the IPPs and all that, negotiations are already going on. Some of the cushion government got out of the negotiations, but not huge one in which they can give some sort of a relief to the industry or the industrial consumer or to the local consumer. So do you think that it is possible and we can do it?
Yes, it is possible if the government has the capacity and the will to do that. That basically is the issue, that if the government formulates the right policies and creates a fiscal space, particularly, which is very important at this point in time, that the government is dealing with a huge fiscal space, issue of fiscal space. So I think that can be manageable as long as the government is committed in doing the needed reforms, which is important in the
energy
power
reforms
sector.
you are
Yes,
talking about.
energy.
Absolutely right. Dr. Aima, after 22 years, Pakistan Stock Exchange remained historical with at least 84% gain in 2024. It increased at least 52,676 points overall, crossed 117,000 points overall. That limit was actually crossed, and last day it was last day of 2024, that was 115,000 points. Given the record 78% of the profits to the investors, that's why more investors are actually coming to the stock exchange to have more businesses over there, because the profit taking is very high. So market investment volume increased at least by 5,000 billion rupees to over 14,000 billion rupees. So now on, experts actually acknowledge that best performance of the stock exchange, but also termed it as a recovery of the stock exchange, core value lost due to the inflation and the sharp depreciation in the currency exchange rate earlier. Also, the global economic environment, the stringent macroeconomic policies, policy rate cut, and obviously the IMF program also contributed in that. So while some actually predicting that index will cross 127,000 mark or more till December 2025, how do you see the performance of the stock exchange, and what is there basically which is boosting the stock exchange overall? And do you agree with these benchmarks by December 2025?
Okay, thank you for bringing this up. I think most of the people and most of the audience are really interested in this question. I think this is a long due activity that the market did deserve and did not really happen because of obvious reasons. There was post-COVID, there was like political issues, there was devaluation, there was a hindrance in taking the dividends out of the country. So there have been many, many issues. So this spike and this activity is actually a long-awaited event that had to happen in the market. There are a few reasons behind it. The first reason is the market has really benefited from interest rates going down. So it's a very well-known economic phenomena and a general phenomena, like when the interest rates go down, because safe deposits are a safe haven for investors and you can get a promised return from there. But when the interest rates go down, investors would either invest in real estate sector or they will invest in the stock markets. Right now, we've had a surge in stock markets because real estate, unfortunately, is being heavily taxed and is heavily scrutinized in Pakistan. So we've had a lot of investment in the stock market, which has really accelerated the market activity and which is a really good thing. Also, the issue is that the stock market and the stock prices, they trade at a certain multiple of the price to earnings, and markets can go up to 13 and 14%, whereas our current market of in the last month has been around 7 to 8 times of the PE multiple. So I think there is still a lot of room for more activity and stuff like that. Also there has been a lot of activity coming out from the mutual funds, because mutual funds were being heavily
Yes,
taxed and the returns were
obviously.
going down. So the money came out of there and it got parked in the stock market. That's another thing. The other more important factor is because IMF has given us the standing facility, and then there are like international investment houses that come to Pakistan or other growing economies because there's a lot of potential, and they do the hedging, and they see the potential and they cut the market from the opposite side. So this is a profit making mechanism for a lot of investment houses. So they
Definitely,
come and they
definitely.
park their
That's
money,
why
and
that's why
also
most of the investors wants to get more profits out of the those performing
exactly.
markets, and as the Pakistan Stock Exchange is actually performing well, so most of the investors are straight away coming towards, and that is a
It's not,
very
yeah,
very important
it's not
point that
just
real
it's
estate.
not yeah, it's not just the market is investing well, but these are like very well studied and researched investment strategies, and um, a lot of investment funds worldwide tend to exploit these opportunities, and this has been a really good
Obviously, obviously.
opportunity for
So, Dr.
and
Aima,
then
one
yeah.
another question that is very important as well, in particularly in terms of Pakistan, the comprehensive agriculture policy. As the production cost, the water rate, and the power tariffs going up, and the rates of various crops actually going down. So, weather patterns are also threatening the climate change and all others, the crop yield. Then we have the agri tax imposed, and the pesticides and fertilizers cost is actually escalating. The substandard seed is creating a lot of problem for the farmers as well. And due to the last year no procurement policy, which is obvious, which is very right in a free market economy, but this year, the wheat sowing has been 30% less. Most of the experts say that it would be 30% less than last year. Then different crops actually face 30 to 35% losses. And then if agri income remain low, because it is the huge and lucrative area, the performing area in which we are 24% of the GDP overall. So how economy will suffer if we will get lower yield or lower profits and crop losses because of the weather or any other phenomena?
So this is a very interesting point that you raised. If you read the World Food Program report published in September 2024, you'll see that Pakistan is facing security of food supply as a country, because it's the fifth largest population in the world, and we as fifth largest population don't produce enough wheat to feed our people, and we've had like severe weather impact in the country. We are facing drought. A lot of our agricultural land has been destroyed because of the industrial waste that we did not take care of in time. So there's a huge issue in how we supply enough food, especially in terms of wheat crop in the country. We used to be one of the biggest wheat exporters in the world, and now we've come to a situation where we don't have enough wheat to feed our own people, unfortunately. The thing is, we need drastic measures around it. I think there was a lot of talk about how to tax agriculture, and instead of taxing the people who own the agricultural land, somehow the government started to tax the farmers and the producers of wheat, which is why we've now got into a situation where we don't have enough wheat. The other thing is the pesticide, the imports are so heavily taxed that it is very difficult for a normal farmer to buy and invest that amount of money. And then when the government purchases them at a national price, it's a very hard procedure, and it's indeed a loss-stricken exercise for the farmers, which is why they've been disincentivized to actually grow crops and export them, or even protect them, produce them for the local consumption. So the issue
Obviously,
right
obviously.
now.
Dr. Aima,
So the issue right now.
it's a huge discussion really, because I don't want to disrupt you, but we have run short of time. So your point well taken. Dr. Neelum, how is the recent, and if you be brief on that, please, because we have very short time left. So how is the recent decision regarding the pension reforms? No double pension except the spouse, pension calculation on last 24 months of the salary basis, impact of the commuted pension excluded actually, and increase will be on the baseline pension. So as after the debt servicing, the defense and development, the pension is actually the fourth largest expenditure in the budget. So how do you see these reforms? And recently 3 of the notifications issued by the finance ministry. So do you think that it's a welcoming step to cut down expenditures?
I'll not go, Raza Saab, into the details of how and what it will go on. It is basically a reform in the pension payment methodology, which was long due,
Yes.
to rationalize the overall pension system in the country. But I would look at it from a welfare point of view, that how this reform is going to, though it will help the government in bringing the reform and creating a fiscal space for the government, as you mentioned, is the fourth largest expenditure that the government is bearing. But on individual level, on the people, the retirees who are basically banking upon their retirement, who have the retirement plans and who look up to this lump sum amount, on that it is going to have a huge impact on that.
Definitely, you are absolutely
right.
right.
So in that case, until and unless the government provide an alternative welfare program for these retirees.
But out of the budget, it's more than 1 trillion rupees,
so
which
in
is
that
allocated
case,
to
the
the
government
pension.
needs to create,
And it is increasing by 24% every year.
Yes, so it's important that those welfare programs are to be placed much before.
But I think so in these reform
things.
process, this pension reform process, government has taken care of most of the people in the welfare term as well. Definitely the spouses particularly, who can draw the double pension, but not those who are actually getting double or triple pensions even.
Yeah, in that
so
case it's fine. But
definitely.
overall, creating a system where the people, once they get retired, would be in a position to have a subsidized services in terms of health, in terms of other housing facilities.
Definitely,
That's
you are right.
important for the government.
Dr. Usman, very brief, very brief. When subsidies get removed, the direct taxes imposed on the disposable income, like the salaried class and the small businesses, and indirect taxes as well. So it's kind of a double or triple taxation you have. Despite of 4.1% of the inflation, the commodity prices are still high. Then income getting low. The unemployment rate is more than 6%, and other factors actually squeezing the purchasing power of a common citizen. World Bank report says that poverty risen by 25.3% in 2024 and 7% rise from the last 2023 year. Means 13 million people more fallen into the poverty. So how the citizens get relief? What the government wants to give actually?
Yes, this is a broad-based international problem of the new poor. For many people, it's their first experience of poverty because many gains have been erased of the last 20 years because of this inflation crisis around the world. Pakistan's 13 million is not that large compared to the total mass of new poor in the world, but it is going to be very traumatic for them. And this also tells you that inflation coming down doesn't translate into cost of living becoming easier. And now you will see that people will start to think about how they can be more productive, how they can save more, because Pakistan is basically coming up to the price level of the world for everything. We have been considerably cheaper for 75 years, and this is not sustainable because we don't live on an island in our old world.
Definitely.
That's what is happening.
You are right, absolutely right. Thank you very much, Dr. Usman, for being here in the studios. Thank you very much, Dr. Neelum, for your presence. And thank you very much, Dr. Aima Mehdi, for being with us online and very elaborative and candid views. Unfortunately, we don't have much time to discuss, but it's a huge topic and we'll discuss further as well. Thank you very much for your presence online. Viewers, you have just listened to our panel Uraan Pakistan is no doubt a fascinating and a very ambitious plan, but it needs more focused approach. It needs to be to have rigorous reforms and also the facilitation for the investors as well, and encouraging the talent which Pakistan has and giving them opportunity for the entrepreneurship and all that and empowerment. So we can achieve it. 1 trillion rupees mark of the economy, we can achieve it by 2025, even earlier. But we also can achieve by 2047 the 3 trillion mark as well. But that needs the structural issues as well, because we have to address those, the tax, the information technology, the energy reforms, the water reforms, agriculture reforms and all others. Then government is eager to achieve the IMF reform agenda. That is very important, as IMF delegation is going to arrive next month or in early March. So the tax collection target must have to be achieved. It's a must achieve thing. Then also the digitalization is very vital if we want to enhance our tax base beyond 13%, and we can go beyond that. But we need realization and the real-time tax reforms, and particularly the digitalization and also the state-owned enterprises, because remodeling, restructuring, the change of management or rationalization or ultimately the privatization would be a great option for us. Then of course the Pakistan Stock Exchange is going to perform vigorously this year 2025 as well, but we need to open up the real estate sector as well, in which we can earn a lot of foreign direct investment into, and particularly when we are talking about translating the inflation, translating it to ease of cost of living for the common man, ease in the cost of doing business as well. So I think so in that case there would be a win-win situation for Pakistan, particularly when there would be facilitation for industry regarding power. Then we have diversification of our products, the value addition, and particularly the export-led growth, and then the trade diversification as well. This is all from today's Foresight. It's time to sign off. Allah Hafiz.